Grant your blessings so that my mind may be one with the Dharma. Grant your blessings so that Dharma may progress along the path. Grant your blessings so that the path may clarify confusion. Grant your blessings so that confusion may dawn as wisdom. Home in the northwest of the land of Uddiyana, a blooming lotus flower, you have attained supreme wondrous city. You are renowned as Padmakara, surrounded by a retinue of many dakinis. We practice following your example. Please approach and grant your blessing. Guru Padma Siddhi Om. Great Vajradhara, Tebo Naram Vartam Hira, or Dharma Gampopa, knower of the 3 times omniscient Karmapa, holders of the 4 great and 8 lesser lineages, 3 Kuntapam Sapa, these 3 glorious Rupa, and so on. Masters of the profound path of Mahamudra, incomparable protectors of beings that Takpil Kagyu, supplicate you that Kagyu Gurus, I hold your lineage, grant your blessings so that I will follow your example. Revulsion is the foot of meditation, as is taught to this meditator who is not attached to food and wealth, who cuts the ties to this life. Grant your blessings so that I have no desire for honor and gain. Devotion is the head of meditation, as is taught. The Guru opens the gate to the treasury of oral instructions to this meditator who continually supplicates and grants your blessings so that genuine devotion is born in me. Awareness is the body of meditation, as is taught. Whatever arises is fresh, the essence of realization to this meditator who rests simply without altering it. Grant your blessings so that my meditation is free from conception. Essence of thoughts is Dharmakaya, as is taught. Nothing whatever but everything arises from it to this meditator who arises in unceasing play. Grant your blessings so that I realize the inseparability of samsara and nirvana. Through all my births may I not be separated from the perfect Guru, and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma, perfecting the virtues of the paths and bhumis. May I speedily attain the state of Vajradhara. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha and Vulture Peak Mountains, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature, then through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita address in this way? Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature, for way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. The Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I got to, no mind got to, no got to of dharmas, no mind consciousness got to, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, got to, no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of prajna paramita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear, they transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of prajna paramita fully awaken to unsurpassable true complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of prajna paramita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as true, since there is no deception. The prajna paramita mantra is said in this way: Om Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhisattva. Putra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound prajna paramita. The Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. Practice the profound prajna paramita, just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice when the Blessed One had sent this venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that rules simply and the world with its documents. Asuras and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Thank you, both of you.
Good evening, everyone. We're very fortunate tonight to have Michelle LaPorte speaking. I'd like to read a brief bio. Enjoy this. 4 decades ago, while stopping in Amsterdam for a bit on her way to a monastery somewhere in Japan, Michelle was searching for a meditation group to practice with temporarily. Unable to find a Zen center, she joined a small gathering of students of the Tibetan teacher Chogyam Trungpa, mainly because he had authored Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, a book that had influenced her greatly. As a result of that decision, Michelle has had the privilege of studying with Chogyam Trungpa himself, as well as many of the great teachers of his mandala, including His Eminence Jamgon Kongtrul III, Khenpo Tsultrim Gyatso Rinpoche, and Zongsar Khyentse Rinpoche, and Rinke Rinpoche. For over 3 decades, she has made her home in New York City, where she teaches on topics, she teaches on topics ranging from illustration to sustainability and climate change at the Parsons School of Design, does painting on restoration, on Himalayan and South Asian art, manages a gallery of Buddhist and Hindu art, on the Upper East Side and organizes a book club dedicated to the volumes of the profound treasury of the Ocean of Dharma by Chogyam Trungpa. She is still on her way to Japan.
All true. Well, it seemed like the obvious thing to do to begin the second talk of the New York Dharma Buddha Dharma Center with a talk about the Heart Sutra, because what else is there? It's the full thing. And it seems like a good thing to do to begin any talk about anything with a karma. And any karma will do. But we'll begin this one with the 17th karma. So, in 2006, a few of us were in Bodh Gaya because there was the opening of this monster monastery in Bodh Gaya, a really huge monastery called the Tergar Monastery, or the Tergar Institute. Maybe some of you have been there, you've seen it. Migir Rinpoche built this monastery with the help of His Eminence Situ Rinpoche, Tai Situ Rinpoche, for His Holiness the 17th Karma. And in those days, His Holiness was diligent about learning English because he had not been to the West yet, and he really wanted to come to the West, and especially to come to the United States, and he thought that he'd be able to come within a few months. It turned out to be about a year and a half, but still. He gave a talk to the Western students who were there for the prayer festival and for this opening almost every night. And so the place was the size of a football stadium inside, and we all came and sat on the floor and listened to His Holiness learn English on us. And one of the things he said one night was that he said, you should understand that us monks, us lamas, are very impressed with you Western students. We're impressed with how well you understand what we refer to as the wisdom teachings. You got it a lot faster than we thought you would, and we're very pleased about that. Some of you are quite able to comment on them with knowledge and authority, and we're kind of amazed, frankly. But we like to say that a bird has two wings. And one of the wings of this bird is the wisdom teachings, and the other wing is the compassion teachings. And we think maybe it's time to start working on the other wing as Western students. Maybe the other one's a little weak. So, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, used to like to throw his students in off the deep end. And sometimes off the shallow end, but just basically throw them in to the Buddha Dharma, because Trungpa Rinpoche had tremendous trust in, well, let's say two things we could talk about now. One is the words of the Dharma, and the other, of course, is lineage. And he knew that by exposing us to those two things, everything would work out eventually. One of the very first things and longest exposures that we ever got was to the Heart Sutra. He started us chanting the Heart Sutra right from the get-go, right from the very beginning. And he knew it would work on us. So, about 3 years ago, Judy Leaf, who, by the way, for those of you who know her and those of you who don't, sends her very best regards to everyone tonight. So Judy Leaf is Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's main editor. And about 3 years ago, she finally published a set of teachings called The Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma, 3 volumes. And the second volume is the Mahayana volume. And in that volume, one can find a number of references to the Heart Sutra that Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche made at various times in various seminaries of the 13 that he taught. So one of the main references that he made to the Heart Sutra was about the 2 truths, relative and absolute truth. And he also referred to the wings of this putative bird, probably a Garuda in his case, as having a wisdom wing and a compassion wing. And the wisdom wing was correlated with absolute truth. So this is the complete understanding of emptiness. And the compassion wing was correlated, or skillful means wing, was correlated with relative truth. This is from a bodhisattva's standpoint. So a bodhisattva is coming from the standpoint, if one could say this, and one actually can't, of a pure understanding of absolute truth, and acts in the world, so that would be skillful means, by using the relative truth, relative understanding of the world, for the benefit of alleviating suffering. So that's sort of a further elaboration of the 2 wings of this bird. We'll talk about this in a minute because the Heart Sutra is really about that. The Heart Sutra is a discourse. It's almost a theatrical discourse between Mr. Wisdom, or knowledge, who would be Shariputra, and the Bodhisattva of compassion, who is Avalokiteshvara. So it is wisdom and compassion talking to each other. And in this discourse, one of those 2 great beings' thoughts gets cleaned by the other one, in the case of the Heart Sutra. So maybe we should refer to, we will, for the most part, refer to the Nalandabodhi version of the Heart Sutra. And we should just sort of go through it. Yes. So thus have I heard. Once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha, Blessed One of course being the Buddha. Rajagriha, near the Vulture Peak Mountain, which is very near Bodh Gaya, actually, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time the Blessed One entered the deep meditation that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. So Trungpa Rinpoche sometimes equates illumination with vipassana. Vipassana meaning deep seeing. So profound deep seeing. You'll notice in this first paragraph we have 2 profound instances meeting each other. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. So, let's talk a little bit about the profound Prajnaparamita. First of all, the Prajnaparamita Sutra seems to be the only sutra that Avalokiteshvara, the great bodhisattva of compassion, actually is featured in the law. And he is the main proponent in this sutra. There are lots of versions of the profound Prajnaparamita text. There is the 100,000 verse version, which is 12 volumes and 21,000 pages. There is an 8,000 line one. There's a 150 line version. There is our version. And there is a single syllable version, all with the same meaning. Can anyone guess what the single syllable version is? Ah, there we go. It turns out that actually the Heart Sutra has a really interesting, very twisted history. And there are all kinds of fights about where this really comes from. But it was extracted, everyone agrees, everyone being translators, agrees that the Heart Sutra is an extract of the Prajnaparamita Sutras. Thinking these days is that happened in China. That it was then taken, so it had come from India, was taken to China, was extracted, brought back to India, retranslated, and a beginning and an end was appended to the Heart Sutra. So even in those single syllable Heart Sutra, there's a beginning similar to what we read, and there's an end as well. So a whole long story. Prajnaparamita. So Prajnaparamita means a number of things. Can anyone define what prajna means?
Wisdom.
Wisdom, yeah. It's generally translated as wisdom. What kind of wisdom?
Heart wisdom?
Oh, what kind?
I don't know.
Insightful?
Yes, very insightful. For a particular kind of thing.
Discriminating. Well, that's even so.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's the wisdom that sees emptiness. And some people translate prajna as insight, as the word insight, which when I heard the argument for that, I thought was really interesting. Because wisdom's a pretty loaded word in some ways. Wisdom is almost like a kind of a baggage one might carry around. Very good thing, very good. But insight has a more immediate quality to it. It's a direct sort of seeing of something as it's taking place. And that seems to have other connotations that are related to the meaning of this text. So insight and paramita, anyone?
Perfection.
Perfection, yes, perfection, completion. So perfection of insight, perfection of wisdom. Does anyone know what Prajnaparamita looks like in Tanka paintings? Well, yes, Vajrayogini is related to Prajnaparamita, exactly. Ellen, what did you say?
Feminine figure.
Yes, a feminine figure, 4 arms, known as the mother of the Buddhas. Do we have Prajnaparamita? No, we don't. She's very, very beautiful. And yes, Vajrayogini is related to her. Troma is related to her. So some of the other feminine deities are. So the mother of all the Buddhas, it's this kind of wisdom that is what the sutra describes. And more than describes it. So the Heart Sutra has a lot of sort of jobs, a lot of ways of looking Let's throw out a few words for heart. Why do we think it's called the Heart Sutra?
Core of things.
Core of things,
The
yes.
essence of things.
Essence, yes. Yeah.
Mind and heart.
So heart meaning warmth, love, a love aspect. Yeah. And mind aspect in the case of them combined. Anything else?
It's the pit.
Pith. It is very much the pith. It's also, historically, it's been mantra. So the Heart Sutra is sometimes used as a mantra. Mantra in at least two senses. One, in the sense of a condensation of a very large text, and in another sense as a sort of a protection. Has anyone heard of Machik Labdra? Yes, Rochelle's heard of it. Yes. Gail's heard of it too. So, Machik Labdra was one of the really great, we could almost call her a Manas. I don't think formally we can call her that, but one of the really great Tibetan saints, let's say. And supposedly she was born reciting the Heart Sutra. It used to be a practice to recite the Prajnaparamita Sutras, so not just the Heart Sutra, but the Prajnaparamita Sutras, to read them or recite them, especially when things were rough or people had passed away or whatever. People would come and recite this. It has a protective aspect as a mantra. Its chief protection is to protect us from ourselves, as we'll see. It's a recitation. So we say the Heart Sutra at the Shambhala Center or on Ocean, the website that's devoted to the teachings of Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche with lots of classes and so on. The Heart Sutra is recited on the full moon and the new moon. But it can be recited over and over, and it's good to memorize it. It's not that long. And memorize it as a poem, and let it work on one. So there are a lot of apocryphal stories. This is almost a Dharma story from New Orleans. I heard it somewhere, I don't know, that there was a pianist who was playing piano on the second floor of his house one day, and suddenly the floor gave way and he fell through to the basement. Why? Because termites had been working on that house. They had been working on the wood foundations of his house unbeknownst to the piano player on the second floor. The Prajnaparamita, the Heart Sutra, could work that way. Mantras can work that way, where they sort of get into ego mind, and before you know it, kaboom. And finally, Karl Brunhölzl, who many of you know from this center, from Nalandabodhi. So Mitra Karl Brunhölzl wrote a book called The Heart Attack Sutra. And Karl is a card-carrying genius saint. He has a way with words like very few others, and we'll hear some of his comments in a few moments. But Heart Attack Sutra, because, and here's another apocryphal story, supposedly that's what happened. When the Buddha's, when the Heart Sutra came about, so the Buddha didn't directly speak until the end of this, but it was through connection with his mind that this little dialogue took place in his presence. When this happened, the very learned ones that were there, some of them were so perplexed by what they heard that they got up and walked away. Others became ill, and a few of them had a heart attack. We'll see why in a moment. But the Heart Sutra is meant to be deeply startling. In fact, thanks to Carl, I have an excerpt here that was online on Lion's Roar, which you may know about. It's a really good website for all kinds of great stuff. And they excerpted from the Heart Attack Sutra. And Carl found this really good little reference from Sangharakshita. So this is not the others, Shantarakshita. This is Sangharakshita. He says it applies very well to the Heart Sutra. If we insist that the requirements of the logical mind be satisfied, we are missing the point. This is actually about the Diamond Sutra, or the Diamond Cutter Sutra, very similar to the Heart Sutra, in the sense of talking about emptiness and very straightforward. The Diamond Sutra is actually delivered, what the Diamond Sutra is actually delivering is not a systematic treatise, but a series of sledgehammer blows, attacking from this side and that to try and break through our fundamental delusion. It is not going to make things easy for the logical mind by putting things in a logical form. This sutra is going to be confusing, irritating, annoying, and unsatisfying, and perhaps we cannot ask for it to be otherwise. If it were all set forth neatly and clearly, leaving no loose ends, we might be in danger of thinking we had grasped the perfection of wisdom. So, we've gotten through most of the first paragraph here. We'll talk about the skandhas in a minute, not too much though. So at this point, the Buddha has entered this profound samadhi, this profound meditative state. He's not talking. And Avalokiteshvara has had a flash of insight, of deep insight, in which he saw the five skandhas, so the psychophysical components of a human being, to be empty of nature. So now comes Shariputra. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a child of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? So just a word about Shariputra, who is someone that I have great affection for. He's one of the most underappreciated people in Buddhism, as far as I'm concerned. He's a little bit like, well, we won't go there. It's a political season. Shariputra, first of all, when we see the Buddha, like a depiction, a tanka painting of the Buddha, he's usually flanked by two disciples. So the one on the left, and these two disciples are like Mutt and Jeff. They grew up together, or very close to each other, in villages next to each other. Maudgalya Putra is the one on the Buddha's left, and his friend Shariputra is the one on the Buddha's right. So Shariputra was a very, very important person in the early Sangha. He was second only to the Buddha in terms of learning. But it didn't start out that way. One of the things that I really love about Shariputra is the following little verse that many teachers will make us repeat over and over as a mantra. And that's Om Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetum Tesham Tathagato Hyadavat Tesham Cha Yo Nirodha Evam Badi Mahashramana Svaha. And this is what a monk said to Shariputra on the road. Shariputra and his pal decided, they made a pact that they would go out looking for the best teacher possible. The first one to attain a level of realization would run and tell the other one so that they could practice and learn with this teacher together. At that time, there were a number of wandering mendicant teachers in India and in that area. So there were people to encounter. So one day, Shariputra was on the road in India, and he saw a monk or a mendicant coming toward him who looked particularly beautiful. And he took notice of this person and he said, "You must be studying with somebody. You look so extraordinary, you're glowing." And the monk said that verse to him. Of all those things that from a cause arise, Tathagata, the cause thereof, has told. And how they cease to be, that too he tells. This is the doctrine of the great recluse.
The great
Recluse. One translation. But this is how he described his teacher, this mendicant on this road who was glowing in his beauty, and that Shariputra noticed. When Shariputra heard those words, he had the beginning of a realization merely upon hearing those words. He was that close. So of course he went, met the Buddha, grabbed Madhgaya Putra, and the two of them became the Buddha's acolytes. In Shariputra's case, he was a great scholar. He turned into a great scholar. He became the master of what we know as the Abhidharma. Many of you are familiar with the Abhidharma. It's a little bit like being familiar with trigonometry. People like it about just as much. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche wrote one of the best little books about Abhidharma, called Glimpses of Abhidharma. And it makes it all quite real for everybody, and actually it's marvelous. It's a really good read. Anyway. So, Shariputra was the keeper of the knowledge, and the Buddha would even ask him to give talks in his stead, if it had to do with the 4 of this and the 8 of that and the 12 of this and whatever, because nobody knew it better than Shariputra. No one was more articulate about these things than Shariputra. So can you see this is a very underrated person that we have here, because we never hear about Shariputra. So finally, this is what the Buddha had to say about Shariputra. If one could ever say rightly of one that he is the Blessed One's true son, born of his speech, born of the Dhamma, formed of the Dhamma, heir of the Dhamma, not heir to worldly benefit, it is Shariputra that one could thus rightly declare. After me, O monk, Shariputra rightly turns the supreme wheel of Dhamma, even as I have turned it. The Buddha also predicted that Shariputra would become a Buddha, and that his name would be Glowing Flower. So the reason, why does this matter? I think it matters because Shariputra had a mind that, other than being hyper-scholarly, and, we're all at different parts with that, but he had a mind a lot like ours. because he had a lot of information in his mind, and he had an extremely high regard for information. So even if we have a casual sort of relationship to information in that we just live in New York and we're inundated with information all the time, we still live in an information world, obviously. And we have a high regard for science, for certain kinds of organization of that information that helps us to get by. This was the case with Shariputra. So when Shariputra asked questions, they were questions like we would ask. His mind, he was coming from a place like we might come from. And above all, in terms of the information that he knew, since it came from the Buddha and since he was the Buddha's spokesperson on these things, he felt that this information would wake him up, would lead to his deep realization, to his non-returning to confusion kind of realization, to his enlightenment. He was probably both wrong and right about that. Okay, so now we get into the vegetables of the Heart Sutra. Some people would say meat, not meat. Okay, so now Shariputra has asked Avalokiteshvara, how does a person attain the realization that you've just seen? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, who, by the way, is sometimes translated as a woman. In fact, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, is often a woman in East Asian forms of Buddhism. And in the insight version of the Heart Sutra that I have here, she is a woman. Just for something new to think about. Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, Shariputra, a child of noble family who wishes to practice the profound prajnaparamita should seek in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. So skandhas, form, feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness. Those are a loose translation of the skandhas. This is going to be very brief. If you want to know, and you should want to know, because this is actually very cool, about the skandhas, this is the best description of the skandhas that I can imagine. So they are the so-called psychophysical components of a mind, of a human. So form is like basic visual or smell or basic sort of raw sense, as in five senses data, all the way up to consciousness, which is how that form accumulates in our mind, gathers meaning, and turns into ideas, concepts, and creates a worldview that we live in. So in those five sort of steps or stages, which, by the way, skandha means heap. It means that those stages are not connected. They are piles of dust, as the Buddha laid them out. There's a reason for that, which we probably won't get into. Anyway, this is Shariputra's territory. He could have written this book, Glimpses of Abhidharma. So now, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. What do you mean, empty of nature? Form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, and form is no other than emptiness. There is a large body of teachings in Buddhism known as the Middle Way teachings, or Madhyamaka. Has anyone studied Madhyamaka? Here? Yeah. Madhyamaka teachings that stem from the 2nd century teacher Nagarjuna and many other commentators after that are the study basically beginning with the Prajnaparamita Sutras, the study about emptiness. Without going too much into Madhyamaka, we should say that emptiness, what it says here about emptiness is so very, very important. Emptiness is the basis for the Bodhisattva path. It's the basis for everything that we do. But understanding emptiness is one of the most challenging things in Buddhism. And it's our habit as general humans to turn everything, including emptiness, into a thing. Could be a state, it could be an invisible thing, it could be a mysterious thing, it could be a thing we only talk about in Buddhism, it could be, but it's still a kind of a thing in our minds. And what this is saying is that that's not the case. That emptiness exists in a different way. That emptiness is a quality of all phenomena, just like wetness is a quality of water, or heat is a quality of fire. So you don't have emptiness outside of phenomena, of experience, but you also don't have experience outside of emptiness. So now we're going to go through lists of Buddhist teachings, like we're doing in the same way: feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness. So those are the rest of the skandhas, or emptiness. But basically, Avalokiteshvara is taking that sledgehammer to Shariputra's whole identity as a great scholar, his work. In a kind way, of course. Still smashing it to smithereens if we think that these things exist in the way that we usually think things exist. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. Everything is emptiness. There are no characteristics. No birth and no cessation. No impurity and no purity. No decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no. Okay, so nose. Karl Brunhilsel says that, and he would be the one to know, he's probably the guy that's read all 150,000 lines, all 12 volumes, all 21,000 pages, and he says there's a lot of no in there. He says that no is actually the word that is most used in our own Heart Sutra, and it just goes on from there. So the idea is, well, part of the idea is, by starting with the skandhas, it was understood that this no refers to everything that a human is. In our minds, we might have slightly different categories than form, feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness. We might have to say no brains, no heart, no ideas, no past, no present, no future, no memory, no thinking this way, thinking that way, no positives, no negatives, no Republicans, no Donald Trump, no Hillary Clinton, no women, no males, no internet, no whatever, right? So the whole Prajnaparamita Sutras go into that sort of detail, probably including the internet. But what's meant here is that the things that we identify with, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our bodies, our minds, our lovers, our families, our whatever, all of that, no, 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 no. Pulling the rug out from under Shariputra. So, again, to quote Karl Brunhosel, and to be honest with you, the person whose work I enjoy the most about the Heart Sutra is someone named Gil Fronsdal, who is a Zen teacher and an insight meditation teacher living in California. He started a website called audiodharma.org many years ago, and there are several talks of his on the Heart Sutra archive there. They're fantastic. So he also talks about these nodes, and he and Carl share very similar ideas about how this works. So, first of all, the Heart Sutra is asking us to examine ourselves, to look at the way that we normally think things work. Not only that, but how we normally think things exist at all. The Heart Sutra is telling us that they don't exist in the way we think they do. Carl says you could look at all these nodes as different facets or aspects of emptiness. And he encourages us to fill in our own nodes, to make it personal. It's supposed to be very personal. Trungpa Rinpoche calls this aspect of the Heart Sutra countable tundam. Tundam is the Tibetan word for absolute truth. So this is of the two truths, the two wings of that Garuda bird. The absolute truth is the truth of emptiness, also equated with wisdom or insight. So he's calling this countable wisdom or insight. There's also a kind of an uncountable wisdom or insight in the Heart Sutra, and that's later when we hear that all dharmas are marked with emptiness. By the way, dharmas, everybody knows that dharmas means things, means phenomena, means aspects. That's how the word is used here. So all dharmas are marked with emptiness. All dharmas are emptiness. So this is countable absolute truth, this list. Emptiness means that things do not exist in the way that we think that they do. This is because we ascribe a certain kind of autonomous nature, of a self-existing quality to phenomena. We think this is a gong. We think this is a gong pad or a cushion. Instead, we should consider the idea that everything we think that has its own self-nature is actually illusory. It's a dream. The way the Buddha described the experience of emptiness is known as codependent origination. It means that everything is changing. Everything is changing constantly. That all things are conditioned. They're made of other things. And all of those other things are changing constantly. So there's no way that anything exists in a vacuum, all by itself. Everything requires the existence of all other things for us to name it, for us to think of it as being real. We should understand that we are dreaming. We're trying to freeze experience. We're trying to freeze the dynamic that won't be frozen. We're creating things out of pure change. Constant change. When we create these things, what do we do with them?
Label them.
We label them, yeah.
Label.
Label, yes. And what else we're showing you can say?
We make them solid.
We make them solid.
We have like really intense relationships with them.
Exactly.
We grasp.
We hang out, we grasp, right? We really, really hang out, and also we barter. We turn these things into currency. And we use them. And we have love-hate relationships with things. And we get very fixated on things. This clinging, this hanging there. They become very important to us. And it's not just things that we would call things, but it's idea things, too. It's emotional property that we also get all attached to, all clinging about. Well, what if they don't exist in the way that we think they do? What if really they can't be grasped? Because by the time let's say by the time we get there, they've already changed. It's not what we were looking for. Not only that, look what's grasping. It's not me. Not the same person grasping that thing. Everything is changing. It's a movie, watching a movie. And even that, we can't be sure. Ego is kind of a wicked problem. Does anybody know what a wicked problem is? Do you use it in your work? The idea of a wicked problem? Well, a few of us work on a course at Parsons called, it's a course about sustainable design and climate change. And we could say that climate change presents a number of wicked problems. These are problems that create more problems when you try to solve them. They're like breeder reactors for problems. And we could say that ego is like a breeder reactor wicked problem. When we try to address it one way, it pops up in another place. Right? So, Trungpa Rinpoche talked about this a lot, actually, in Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. One of the chief ways we try to address ego might be spiritual materialism. Turning things that, again, don't have a self-nature into things and using them to so-called solve other things. So this is what the Heart Sutra is talking about. It is, when we chant it, it's just reminding us of this. It teaches us this itself, like the termites in the basement, but also we have the great teachings that many of us have been exposed to, we can read, whatever, so it reminds us of what we know. And Rinpoche used to talk about, a lot of it is just remembering what we already know. It's another reason why this is the Heart Sutra is a protective mantra, protecting us from our own forgetfulness. So Carl says that thinking outside the box is really, in a lot of ways, what the Heart Sutra, it's pretty much the only conclusion we can come to. If there's no anything, not even emptiness, thinking outside the box is beginning to understand emptiness. The box being this relative world that we live in. So that's something more to just, think about, to contemplate, that it's nothing we're ever going to say about emptiness is going to be true. It'll be close, we can train our minds in the right direction, but really, what Avalokiteshvara is saying to Shariputra is that nothing you can say is the deep insight, the profound insight, the profound prajnaparamita. You have to jump outside of that box of those meanings. So the box is fine, but it's not getting you to this insight. Shariputra had asked Avalokiteshvara about this insight, this Buddha mind that Avalokiteshvara had been able to achieve. And the Bodhisattva of compassion is telling the great wisdom teacher here that really what they need is to jump out of their own box in order to get to where the Bodhisattva of compassion has arrived. So, I'd like to read just a couple. This next part is, therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment being on the list of things, they got X'd. They abide by means of prajnaparamita. By the way, there was a wonderful thing in Trungpa Rinpoche's Profound Treasury about the difference between know and not. So he said, as we've noticed, the word is know. All the translations say know. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no God, no mind. They do not say not. Not has the implication of, if it's not something, then it must be something else. Whereas no has no implication at all. That becomes kind of important, especially if you do get into Madhyamaka studies, which is blissful. Okay, so here in the Nalandabodhi translation you've got, since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. But other translations say it in other kind of cool ways, including the one that we'll read at the end. And we're almost at the end because it's a long day for everybody and then jumping into emptiness. But you'll see the Buddha has a way of waking us up. Anyway, so this translation that you all also have, which we'll read at the end, is from Red Pine. So Red Pine is a mountain man, old hippie guy that has been translating Chinese Buddhist texts for a long time. He's a poet, and he's excellent. He did a translation of the Dharma Sutra that some people may know, and he wrote a small book called the Heart Sutra. This is his translation of that, and I think his is incredibly beautiful. Therefore, Shariputra, without attainment, bodhisattvas take refuge in prajnaparamita and live without walls of the mind. Without walls of the mind and thus without fears, they see through delusions and finally nirvana. Without walls of the mind. The translation of this, that is the Insight Meditation translation by Gilfranc Dahl. With nothing to attain, the bodhisattvas depend on perfect wisdom, and their minds are without any hindrance. Without any hindrance, no fears exist. Far removed from perverted thought, they are awake. So when the bodhisattvas see this no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, their minds are no longer a hindrance. Their minds no longer get in their way. So this is why this solidity that we ascribe to our experience causes us a great deal of suffering. As we've said, we have these intense relationships with things because we hang on so much. The essence of the Buddhist path, according to this, basically is stop clinging. Don't cling because there's nothing to hang on to and there's nobody hanging on to it anyway. It's that clinging that is so painful. The bodhisattvas see this. This is called seeing emptiness, being emptiness, coming from the standpoint of emptiness. And because of this, their minds don't bother them anymore. So what do you have when you're no longer believing in experience as being solid? The world isn't full of objects anymore. What do you have? What's left over? What are the bodhisattvas? What do they put their trust in, according to the Heart Sutra? Exactly. They put their trust in insight. Just insight, in awareness. They don't necessarily put their trust in memory. Something has to be this way because it's always been this way. They trust their minds. They trust this raw awareness, this insight. Because of that, because they have no ideas, or they don't trust ideas about what experience is supposed to be, they are the embodiment of compassion. This is where emptiness and compassion, this is the pivotal point where emptiness and compassion are exactly the same thing. And where the bodhisattva of compassion is teaching the very knowledgeable scholar that there's one more thing that he needs to understand. So without walls of the mind, what's left is compassion. That's what the Heart Sutra is saying. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra. So, Gil Franz Dahl points out that although almost all the translations, and the one that we say, do not translate the mantra, so we say Gate Gate, Paragate, Parasangate, Bodhi Swaha. He said that actually people would have known what that was. That would have been their language when they're back. So maybe it's okay to translate that mantra. So his translation of it, and I think same as Trungpa Rinpoche, Om, because all mantras start with Om. Gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond, awake, hallelujah. That's the mantra. Gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond, awake, hallelujah. That's what we're saying. Not bad. He's very funny. He did his master's thesis on the 8,000 verse Prajnaparamita text, and then got his PhD on the 150,000 verse Prajnaparamita text, and he said, all that studying, all those words in the thesis, you can get your PhD in the Prajnaparamita, and it all boils down to 2.5 words. Don't cling. That's what this is. Don't cling. So some Heart Sutra versions end right after that mantra. This last part was sort of appended. And it's nice. We don't need to talk about it too much. I think that would be enough for tonight, at least from my standpoint. So is there anything we'd like to talk about? Should we get up and dance and jump around? Hallelujah!
Thank you so much. So much. So there were two things that that I'm aware of right now. One is, so then when we sit in Vipassana, then we're practicing that, right? And we're practicing just being there, just being there. And then the other thing is, I forgot. The other thing is, but you can't just, like you said, Carl Brunholz, yeah, said, you can't, it's not like you can think it out, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like it's logical, like when you say, don't cling, mm-hmm. right? It doesn't mean, okay, I won't cling. It's like, no, not like that. You have to
A little bit
go
like,
all the way through it, right? I mean, you have to know what it is. You have to know at least something about what it is to cling, right?
oh, we all
Before
know.
you can not cling.
Oh, I don't know. Like Nike.
Like what?
Nike. Just do it. Really, because, you know, when we
So I don't
sit,
mean that I would want to like keep on clinging right now, but I mean if I could not do it. But
well, one of the,
but it wouldn't be logic that you would get there with, right?
well, logic helps us a lot.
Yeah.
And so, for example, studying Madhyamaka, that's logic. In fact, those are very rigorous logics. And they're hard. But boy, do they help. So, you know, everything helps to prepare the mind. But you know, one of the chief meditation instructions for our basic sitting practice is let go. Right? When we find ourselves distracted and we've gone off and we're in some train of thought and then we suddenly wake up because in fact we parked ourselves on a cushion. So we come back to where our body is. And we let that go. We just let it go. We let it go gently or nicely or with respect. But we let it go thoroughly. So that's a training in not clinging. And we already know that that carries over. That's very powerful. But it gets, of course, much, much, much deeper than that. We were just studying in the Profound Treasury, we just finished the second volume, we were studying about the bhumis, the bodhisattva levels. Basically, the first 10 bhumis, the 11th being complete enlightenment, the first 10 bhumis are about not clinging, about subsequent levels, deeper and deeper and deeper levels of letting go of traces of habits that we have. So the main thing is to just do it, I think. And I think that the Heart Sutra is one of those things that reminds us about that.
Thank you a lot.
I thought the metaphor of the box was interesting because there was a sequence there. One is thinking outside the box, and then the bodhisattvas have no walls of the mind, they have no box.
Architecture.
The mind is just becomes wisdom. Actually, there's no mind either.
Actually, do you remember, Alan, do you remember Buddha in the palm of your hand?
I remember
The book
written by the Vajrayana.
by the Vajrayana. And maybe John remember that, where I think the Vajrayana has some description about sitting in a box with, and then the walls of the box fall open. And that this was some metaphor or some description for, you know, attaining some realization, some level of realization. Falling away, no lid, and just the box falling open.
There's also the metaphor of the sheath of wheat, which is upright and tied together, and then that which ties the wheat is cut, and the wheat just opens up completely.
Right, and that's a metaphor for sitting meditation, for the letting go of sitting meditation. It's like cutting that rope and so,
Thank you very much. I believe you said it was Trungpa Rinpoche who advised us to make it personal. Is that right?
he was always advising us to make it personal, but actually it was Carl Brunhausen who went in the Heart Attack Sutra.
Yeah, that really resonated with me. To bring in all my prejudices or judgments or habits or whatever, in order to understand just where that influence should come from.
Well, you know, at the end of this article on Mind's Road, it's pretty funny. He says, that's where he describes why he calls it the Heart Attack Sutra. He said, you know, arhats, some of them actually lost their lives because they had spent their whole, everything, their whole lives studying, like Shariputra, studying and learning these things very, very deeply. They were extremely identified with the skandhas, the Abhidharma, and they had some sense of liberation. They knew that they shouldn't overtly identify with these things, but still, it was their whole lives. And here, Avalokiteshvara was saying, none of these things exist, and the Buddha tells him he's done a beautiful job. That's the end of it. He didn't talk about it. So the Buddha says, yeah, that's really good, right? So Carl says, you know, it's kind of good news and bad news that nobody in this room's had a heart attack. On the one hand, we're all still here, and on the other hand, maybe not one of us got it. So making it personal. And taking your heart medication. So,
it has struck me over the years, and one reason why I'm a fan of Stephen Batchelor's is how the propensity for Buddhist teachings to fall into metaphysics or epistemology, an ontology, something that is talking about things that, the truths, the way things are. Whereas, from his view, I'm talking about Stephen Batchelor, my own, Buddhism isn't about that. And the Heart Sutra, one of the greatest sutras, has a great tendency, it seems to me, to that. That we've arrived at actually, perversely, the opposite intent of the Heart Sutra, which is basically, as you're saying, letting go concept. And when you make that comment about how maybe it's a bad thing that we don't have heart attacks, one reason to not have a heart attack is that you didn't fall into getting it. And that is the basis of that heart attack, that you got it and now you realize there's no ground there. You didn't get it at all. The no's, all the no's in the Heart Sutra, only have their meaning because of the yeses. In other words, form and emptiness. There's a distinct possibility in that Heart Sutra that people feel they've arrived at the ultimate truth. Because we use the term absolute truth, which is a kind of, possibly we could come up with a better name for it. Because it's really just the other side of a coin that contradicts itself, form and emptiness. It's not that emptiness is the real truth, because it's meaningless without form.
well, contradicts, I don't know. I mean, on a conventional level, initially, when you say form and emptiness, they do seem to be opposites. But what we're being told here is that they're not.
That's my point. And that's why when we say that no has meaning only in the sense of it's undermining or taking the rug out from under our conventional sense of form. But it's not this no, like in no, it doesn't exist. Because, as I go back to what I was referring to Mr. Batchelor, Buddhism isn't about that. It's not about some arrival at what is and not is. It's a practical means of liberating the mind from concepts, as you've been saying, letting go. but it is not arriving at a more real or truer one. That's what I consider the mistake. And so, is that
Well, it would be if it stopped.
if it stopped?
Right, but I think that the Heart Sutra is a mantra. It's an incantation meant to be said over and over and over and over, and so all of its meanings evolve. One sees facets, one sees aspects at different times. That's what all the sutras do, actually. The fact that the Heart Sutra is kind of a bite-sized sutra makes it easier to repeat it. But its meaning does not stop. It does not arrive at any conclusion at all.
Well, again, I agree with you, except what I'm addressing is the tendency, the propensity in it that it does, which is that all these things are, know this, know that, no form, no feeling, no perception, no concept, when of course there is, but not in, the Heart Sutra is kind of meant as an antidote to the fixation of these concepts that need to be not got or grasped, but doing their constant work of undermining or got it or fixed it kind of mind, is what I mean to say.
Yeah, exactly. We are asked to look at this paradox of the fact that things that form an emptiness coexist.
Well, that's what I wanted to say, which is it doesn't resolve that paradox. That's what I wanted to say. It really, its intent, as I understand it,
It's a dynamic.
is to confront us with that perpetual paradox.
And that cutting edge. So Prajna, again, Trungpa Rinpoche talks about all of this really beautifully in the second volume of the Katana Treasury. So Prajna, so we do have that example here. Thanks to Rochelle, who grabbed all the Rinpoche she could find. This is Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom. And he's holding this sword, this flaming sword. And it's meant to cut duality. So it cuts right through our confusion. And the know this, know that. So we say no I, but don't go like that. Or we look, and there's a eye, no nose. So these things still exist, but we're undercutting the way that we understand their existence. Just like the edge of a blade. That's what the Heart Sutra is meant to do. And in the words of Sangharakshita that Karl Brunhusel quoted at first, it's a smashing. It's blunt force on these things. They pop right back, we know that. We also know that from sitting, right? Our thoughts just pop right back. But they never come back the same.
But in the same sense, you need to do the same thing about emptiness. Smash that.
Absolutely.
That's
Yes.
my point.
Thank you.
Another way of understanding it, I think, is when you look at an object, let's say, and say your table, it looks like a table. Anyone would look at it and say it's a table, but then when you start taking it apart, that once was a tree, and where that was a seed, and that kind of thing. Then you realize that everything is like that. Nothing is really solid. That it's all, everything is made of something. then one day it will decay and it will turn into something else. So things are always moving and always fluid, and nothing's ever really solid. And I think that's really a very good way to understand emptiness, and that things aren't what you see them to be.
Sounds like Thich Nhat Hanh. So it's the beautiful teachings on interbeing. You can get from a piece of paper to a cloud in seconds.
Yeah, I was just on the airplane, and I looked out, and there were these beautiful clouds. I've never seen cloud formations like that before, and it almost seemed like you could just run through the clouds, and they seemed so solid. And I really had to remind myself that I was in the middle of the air, and these were just images of white, beautiful things that had a lot of space in them. You couldn't step on it and just.
That's why you have to keep your seatbelt on even when the seatbelt sign is off.
Who's about the word playing? Thank you for the reminder. Another way of looking at the table, kind of very quickly, is once the table is gone, so is the emptiness of the table, which is a very kind of handy way of understanding or reminding oneself that form of emptiness are indivisible. And also, along with seeing the Heart Sutra as a mantra, Carl recommends seeing it as a form of contemplation, which is what we were inferring, that making it personal comes about by contemplating what does it mean to say that all the components of our mind and body don't exist as solid things. What does it mean to say that our path is not solid, it's empty? And just without coming up with answers, just to kind of mull over it. They're quite startling propositions. I don't know any other spiritual path that undoes itself the way that's not answered.
Erases itself as it goes along. Well, like a finger tracing on water, that's another, or a bird's imprint in the sky, all these things about, yes. Are we empty of questions? Or discussion time? One more time. Oh, we ought to be. So perhaps we could end by, it's really short. Maybe we could recite that everybody. This one. The noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, while practicing the deep practice of Prajnaparamita, looked upon the five skandhas and seeing they were empty of self-existence, said, "Here, Shariputra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not separate from form, form is not separate from emptiness. Whatever is form is emptiness, whatever is emptiness is form. The same holds for sensation and perception, memory and consciousness. Here, Shariputra, all dharmas are defined by emptiness, not birth or destruction, purity or defilement, completeness or deficiency. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no sensation, no perception, no memory, and no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, and no mind. No shape, no sound, no smell, no taste, no feeling, and no thought. No element of perception from eye to conceptual consciousness. No causal link from ignorance to old age and death. And no end of causal link from ignorance to old age and death. no suffering, no source, no relief, no path, no knowledge, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, without attainment, bodhisattvas take refuge in Prajnaparamita and live without walls of the mind. Without walls of the mind, and thus without fears, they see through delusions and finally nirvana. All Buddhists, past, present, and future, also take refuge in Prajnaparamita and realize unexcelled perfect enlightenment. You should therefore know the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great magic, the unexcelled mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, which heals all suffering and is true, not false. The mantra in Prajnaparamita spoken thus: Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may our free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the radiance wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thank you, Michelle. That was wonderful.
Yeah.